All right, so one of the things that constantly comes up in conversation, especially with new implementations and things, is SmartList Designer versus SmartList Builder. How do you use one versus the other? When would you want to make the jump to the other one? So today's discussion, I'm going to walk you through how to use SmartList Designer, how to get started, how it works, some of the different intricacies that come along with SmartList Designer, and then when we wrap up, I'll talk about some of the differences between this and SmartList Builder and why you would want to choose one versus the other. So let's get started. So we'll start out with the agenda here. What is SmartList Designer? Where can you find it? Why would you use it? How does it work? What's new? And then any additional questions that you have along the way. So let's start first with what is SmartList Designer? So SmartList Designer is your ability to create brand new smart lists in Dynamics GP from scratch. So you don't have to start or worry about, going out or creating a separate reporting option or purchasing SmartList Builder necessarily to be able to create brand new smart lists in the system. So if you've ever ran into, hey, I need a smart list off of this information in this window, well, there's nothing I can find out in any of the out-of-the-box smart lists that come with the system. This is one way to do it. The other benefit of this too, as we'll see as we go down, there's obviously filters that we can add on to some of these things too. So if you ever extend past filters or you just want to make something simpler. So again, it's that idea that I ran into a wall, I can't get what I need from the out-of-the-box smart lists in GP. I'm going to use this to create a brand new one. So it's conveniently located, and anybody who is set up as an admin will probably annoyingly tell me that they've ran into this as well. It is a new icon in SmartList. So for anybody who's ever opened up SmartList in their current version of GP, found a new icon at the top and clicked on it and then jumped into that previous window that looks really fun if you have no idea where you're at, that's where they've added it to. So anywhere within this, you can click on that new icon and get started. I'm going to show you something a little bit later on a live demonstration about how we can use that new icon and select in something else. But essentially, you come in here, hit the new icon, and you're on your way for getting started with creating a brand new smart list. So why would we use SmartList Designer? Well, for one, you ran into a wall where you need to create and design a brand new smart list in the system. The information that you want isn't readily available in any of the smart lists that are out there. It's free. Other than buying GP in the first place, you get it with your license out there, so you don't actually have to go out and purchase an ISV solution to be able to create brand new smart lists. And I will say that it is getting better with every update. I hope it gets better quicker and quicker and quicker for my sakes. But that's the idea, is that just like the GP workflow and other parts, they continually improve upon it. So to get started, how does it work? We get in and we would hit new. So we'd open up the normal smart list window in Dynamics GP, hit the new icon in the upper left-hand corner, and that gets us started on a brand new smart list from scratch. As we're in the next window here, we start to choose the different things that we want to do with this. So we would give it a list name. At the top, we choose the product that we want it to show up as and the series that we want it to go with. These products right here just basically determine where on the previous window it shows up in our hierarchy of things. So if I choose to put it underneath sales, then it shows up underneath sales. If I choose to put it underneath payroll, then it shows up underneath payroll. So it's really, where is this brand new smart list going to fall within my lookup and for user navigation at that point. Other areas, again, the series here over on the left-hand side. No, don't go forward. We have the ability to choose what database and the tables that are within it. So you can see over here on the left-hand side that as we get in, we really need to understand where am I pulling the information from in the system that I want to pull into my smart list. But basically every table that's available from Microsoft Dynamics GP, its ISVs, anything that shows up underneath the list in there is something that we could surface as a smart list within this. So it surfaces some of your ISV programs and things like that that wouldn't necessarily natively get a smart list tagged for them. So we pull it in, we choose the checkbox next to the table that we want to work with. If I choose the checkbox here, it selects all fields within that table, or I can go select the individual fields within there. Remember, if I'm selecting customer master and I'm also linking it to this one, I don't necessarily need to select the customer number twice. So just kind of remember that. You don't want to select redundant fields as you're doing this. It's all about composure. So we choose the different ones over there based off of the table name, and we go from there. After we're done with that, and we select our fields, they then show up in the selected fields section. One thing to remember about this it's a little bit of annoyance. Hopefully it's something that they fix at some point. But when I select fields, the order that I select them is the order they show up by default in the SmartList. So you have to be real aware of that as you're adding those things that, okay, if you want customer number and customer name next to each other, make sure you select those two first. Otherwise, if you just blow through and you check that box for the entire table name and it throws all those fields in there, whatever order that's in is the order that it comes into this. So you have to remember that you're basically composing the way that your SmartList is going to look by default by selecting those columns within there. You would have to, if you got, I ran into this in one thing that I was working on. I got all done. I had all my table links done. I had 20 fields on there, and I found out that the item description somehow ended up 10 below there. I had to erase all the fields above that to get the item description where I wanted it and then add the fields back in. So just remembering that as we're working with it. There we go. So table relationships come thereafter, because one of the other things that's going to happen in here, all of your smart lists that are currently out in the system, all the ones that are deployed, sales, transactions, customers, vendors, those are all based off of this data set that basically drags a whole bunch of different tables within it. So you're looking at vendors, but you can also get aging information. You're looking at sales transactions, but you can also get customer information and the aging information and things like that. So this piece here is building the table relationship. So as I'm configuring one of these and I say, okay, I've got my item here, but what joins my item to the item quantity table? Or what joins my customer to the sales transaction or vice versa? So when we're setting these up, we set them up and we say, okay, from our table over here, the customer master summary, how does that link to my customer master? And in that case, we just say, okay, what is my unique record? Customer number. We only have one customer number in the system, so that's my unique record. Other places may have other unique records that you have to join together. You're also presented with three options when you're joining those things together, and it's important to understand the differences. The middle section here is our join for joining these two tables together. An inner join means that what's in this table here must be in this table here. If this doesn't have the same information as here, it doesn't show up in our smart list. So it's a great way of getting information where I really only want things that have sales transactions to show up. So if I link sales transactions to the item master and I haven't sold these 100,000 other items, they don't even show up in my smart list because I have that inner join. Now it goes with the other side of the equation where if we choose the left join for it, it's going to grab all the records from over here, and if there's something over here, it displays it, but it doesn't care necessarily if it doesn't find something that joins both of them at that point. And then the last one is our cross join, which means that just very simply, if I was to join together my customer master summary and my customer master together and through customer number from the one table on one side and customer number on the other side, what it would do is it would give me blank records over here and blank records over here if it didn't find those two. So if it found it over here, you'd see Aaron Fitz show up on the left side. If Aaron Fitz didn't have any type of summary information for him, he'd show up on the right side. So when we do a cross join, it returns everything, regardless of which table actually has that data within it. The important thing to always remember with the left join, what I have on the left is what it shows the entirety of. If I want everything from one table, just make sure it's on the left side of that. It's the good rule of thumb for that one. Go ahead.
So the first thing you said, you defined the series, like this is in sales. That literally just shows which folder it shows up in. But
exactly.
You can choose any table from any
correct.
module.
Yeah, you could throw something that has vendor data in the sales bucket.
They have a field that you can join.
Exactly. Yeah, you may end up with SmartList that makes sense, from the inventory information they show, but show up in sales, right. Or something from vendors showing up on the customer side or something along those lines. So after we've set up our table relationships, then we can create some additional things. This is one of the nice things about this. It's a little rough, but it does work. If you need to make some simple calculations and things, we can create calculated fields. So a very good example of this is, hey, I want profit showing up on my sales transactions. I want to be able to filter off a profit. We can do that with a calculated field. We could add sales transactions in, subtract sales minus the cost, and then surface that as a calculated field, which then becomes something that we can use a favorite on and a search criteria for. So we can do calculated fields in there. It does go even as far as giving you the ability to do case statements in there and some of the other functions. So there's a lot of different things that you can surface in the calculated fields. It's a little rough working with, but it can work. I was working with it earlier, and I found it easier to go to my constants and type in the actual case statement versus using the interface here to double-click and select things that I wanted to do a calculated field on. So creating go-tos, and this is one of the things that I wanted to show you guys today. So go-tos can be created where what it'll do is it'll drill out to another SmartList, a navigation list, or a web page. There's no ability, if anybody's using SmartList Builder today, you know that you can point it at a GP window. You know if you open a regular SmartList and you double click on it, it opens a GP window. This doesn't have that quite yet, which means that you're basically using the go-tos in here as a drill down, essentially. You would select this, the default go-to double click would take you to a navigation list where then you could go to whatever you needed. So it's a thin experience at that point, the way that it works. But I wanted to show you one thing that I uncovered as I was working with these. If you compose these things correctly, you can actually use some of the native go-tos that are on a SmartList. So when you're creating a new SmartList through SmartList Designer, and this takes us into a little bit of our live demo side of things. Welcome to SmartList in GP 2018. Nothing has changed. So if I'm in here and I'm in a specific section, so let's say I'm on customers. Well, customers has a whole host of different go-tos that are available underneath it. If I select this SmartList first and then hit new at the top, my SmartList starts out like I'm actually modifying that specific SmartList in the list. So it basically gets me started with whatever was in that SmartList to begin with, all of those fields that were there, and then I could build upon it. It works well. You have to be kind of careful with those sometimes because I've ran in where the performance is just impacted terribly with those because, okay, you're pulling up this SmartList, you've joined in some extra tables, and now you've got one record showing up every 5 seconds. It's terrible at that point. But what I like to show here is that if I have one that I know has basically the general navigation that I want to pull into it and the go-tos, I can start there, erase my fields, and then add in the fields of the actual table that I want to report off of. So if I know that I want to have a go-to that takes me into the customer master window in GP, that wouldn't be natively available through that. But if I look at my go-tos right now, it actually has all of those bolted onto this. So all of the native go-tos that were available off of the customer SmartList have been pulled into this. So a couple of tricks you have to remember when you do this. Those go-tos are built essentially off of the order of these columns that are in there. So when I double click on one of these, it's saying, okay, when I open the customer master record, I'm looking in column 1 from SmartList Designer's point of view for my customer ID. So anything that I'm building into this, I have to make sure that my customer number is my first column. And that goes to say for some of the other areas in the system where we could create one, like the sales transactions, you have to have the document number and the document type in there. The quantity maintenance window I was running earlier has to have the item number, the location, and the record type showing up in there. So there are ways to kind of finagle this to surface some of those default go-tos that are available out of the box in the SmartList. But let's say, for example, I was to take this one and I wanted to use the GP one off of here. You know, natively I wouldn't be able to do that off of this unless I created it from an existing one. So my go-tos normally don't allow that. But if I was to come in and just drop those out of there and then add in the fields that I wanted from my customer table that I want to report off of, so long as I throw that customer number at the beginning, all of those views that were on there should function essentially the same that were on there before. So if I came out and let's just see if there's anything that looks nice. Just trying to think of anything out here that we could run off of. Well, let's just grab the customer here. So again, as long as my customer number is first, then my view from here would actually work. So save this. I'll just call this cash receipts for the moment and say OK. And now that I've created that SmartList, I should be able to click on one of these and still hit the go-to and go to view that customer record, so long as I have that column in the first one. So there's some composure that has to come with these, but that was a little trick that I stumbled upon designing one of these for another customer where it was like, when did that show up in there? So just a little nice thing to take note of. Oh. So the go-tos are available out there. They can be any of the other smart lists and things like that that they go to, or navigation list. So once you're done with it, you simply say okay, and like you saw on mine, it brought it back in, and now we have our custom smart list to be able to work with whatever go-tos we decided to throw onto it at that point, and we can work with. You can see our different ones out here for maybe we added some calculated fields and stuff. The bad thing is that whenever we add fields in, like you see here for aging period amount 1, okay, well that's not my 0 to 30 days or whatever title I have on it. I would have to create a favorite thereafter that names these things nicely, because again, it's pulling the column name, the actual field name from the system. Any smart list that you create from a view, so if you have anybody in the organization or us as a consultant creates a view for you in the system, anything that's based off of a view in SmartList Designer can also be deployed to Excel as well. So the nice thing about that is now we've deployed a smart list to Excel. That's an Excel refreshable report. So instead of having to go in and run smart list for all 10,000 records and export that to Excel and do all our calculations off of it, now we have a published Excel report that goes along with that runs the data and refreshes from the database without me having to go in and let it run through its entirety each time. There is an issue with publishing some of these things on occasion. I just wrote something up and submitted it for the team to take note of. I ran into it with a recent customer as we were working through. There is an issue with some of the date columns whenever you look at things like this. So you have to be aware that there is an undocumented issue in the Excel reports with SmartList Designer where when we compose our smart list, we select specific columns and they're in that specific order. And when I publish that, the Excel report that it deploys for that basically formats that column and just leaves it that way. So if I go in and I create another favorite off of there where let's say that my date column was actually where the vendor check name was, but now I moved it over one, it still kept my date, the date data going into that, but it lost its formatting. So it'll actually show up like this. So if anybody's deployed any Excel reports or you run into this in the future where, what in the world, my Excel report has this junk showing up in it, or it's showing up as a quantity amount or something weird along those lines, it's because there's this undocumented issue that I recently ran into. There's a fix for it, which I'll show you. I included this in here. Hey, there's a blog that's been posted that's actually got all this information in it as well. So Brad's got it out there. We can definitely point you in the right direction if you run into this. But basically there's an undocumented Dex setting that you can turn on that whenever this runs, one, it speeds up your SmartList Excel export substantially. So if you're using this, you could actually turn this on before you even use the Excel reports in the system to make Excel reports deploy quicker from a SmartList NGP, because right now you run 1,000 records and then it has to go through all 1,000 records to export to Excel. It'll run a little bit quicker. But with this little Dex switch turned on, it fixed my payment date. So whatever that thing does, it basically goes through and says, that's actually a date field. Show it as a date field. So after we turn that on, that fixed that little piece there. There's a blog entry that I wrote up that tells you how that actually specifically works. The one thing you have to be aware of is, as I noted up here in the big bold, is that there is a known issue with using this undocumented setting if you're using the web client. So if you have anybody that's going to use this smart list in the web client or use smart list at all or using the web client, you can't turn that on. Otherwise, it causes some adverse effects, apparently. So new to 2015 R2, one of the new things they added was the ability to, in our workflow, approve a new view that was created. So anytime that you're creating a new smart list, if somebody has access to the SmartList Designer in the system, they could go out and build payroll smart lists, essentially, and then deploy them accidentally to people who maybe didn't need to have those types of things. So what this allows us to do is, as we set this up, we can tell it that we have the SmartList Designer view approval turned on, which means that when somebody tries to deploy that new SmartList Designer smart list to the system, it has to go across so-and-so's desk to look at it, say, yes, that looks like something I would want to deploy for everybody to have access to, and then you can give that its blessing to be able to be accessible. Until that time, the smart list shows up, but none of the data would run. 2016, they added the ability to export those too. which is nice because then you can actually save those to the database or save those to a file so that they don't ever get overwritten. It allows you guys as users to collaborate with other people. Hopefully people start posting these things out there where you can grab their stuff and use it. That's always nice. But again, it gives us that ability that if we create something and then you want to release that to the wild, you could always export that first and let them do whatever, and then you've always got a backup of it to be able to work with or restore if you needed to. So that takes us to the last one. Okay, why would I choose SmartList Builder? What takes me to the jump for SmartList Builder versus SmartList Designer? I always throw this up there. E1 did a good job of having this out on their website, and they try to update it as best they can as they go through. But basically on the left, you see all the wonderful things that SmartList Builder can do for you, and then on the right-hand side, you see where they're continually getting to where SmartList Designer can do it. I made notations that they've added some of the things in there for the list level security and the table level security with workflow. I've added limited capabilities in there for some of the things, and then the calculated fields being limited. Why would you want to take the jump to SmartList Builder? It's usability. It's user-friendly. Somebody could get in and learn how to join tables together or design a smart list probably a little bit easier in the SmartList Builder than they could in SmartList Designer. But if you have somebody that's technically savvy or really wants to get their feet wet with SmartList Designer and you only have a few that you want to create, if you've just got a couple that you want to create, SmartList Designer is a great option. If you're looking at a full corporate package that's going to be all these different smart lists that you're deploying, SmartList Builder is a great one because you can deploy new smart lists, Excel reports, and navigation lists all in one package. So again, it's kind of taking that step where you've got the very thin experience with SmartList Designer, and then you can take the step up for SmartList Builder. Both products, though, are functional for their end game. Just depends on how deep you want to go. So questions, comments? Yeah?
Can you group in smart lists? Like you showed, you create a calculated field for profit. I can only see that at the word level. What if I want to see all the profits for a customer? Can I group one customer ID?
They have not added anything for grouping into the system yet. So there's no grouping capabilities in here. So another good example where that would be a SmartList Builder that could do it, or you could build out a SQL view that collapses it, and then you just surf it in. Can you group in Builder? Yes. Yeah, you can summarize data in there and all of that.
I export it into Excel, get it into Access, and Access to get profit by customers.
That's a pain. The other strategy that we could look at is if you're constantly doing that type of thing, we just start with an Excel report, bolt it onto the database, pull the data within that, and then set up your pivots and save the file, and all you have to do is refresh it. So that's a strategy that I'm trying to steer people more towards if they're trying to do any type of aggregate data.